What is going on here with Nate to Wait? This is Crossbeats production, and thank you once again for tuning in. So I want to address the idea of not using a MixBus compressor on your MixBus. It sounds weird, and some of you guys might not even have thought of this idea, and some of you may already have been doing this and are getting good results. So the reason why I want to bring this up is because I feel like there's a lot of push in the digital realm for compressors to be added to everything. And I feel like compression is something that's really misunderstood in the music production / mixing and mastering side of things. And even for myself, as I was going through years and years of mixing tracks for artists, mixing tracks of my own, mixing tracks all over the place, I found that especially in the live realm, where I didn't have the opportunity to use compression as much as I do in a DAW scenario where I've got all of the compressors in front of me, I can just throw them on anything I want at any time. I feel like the live set taught me a lot. I actually, on occasion, have been in the sound desk in quite a large church and been running the sound for that particular church. And when I was doing that, it actually really opened my eyes to live instrumentation and room acoustics and just in general listening for what sounds good. I didn't have the opportunity on that mixing board to use a whole lot of compression, and I didn't really have the time to do that either. If I was going to do it, I would have done it maybe on a drum kit or something like that, on the actual mics that came into the board. But during the mixing on that live set, that I was just listening for what was there and listening for the instruments and listening for the volumes of those instruments and the vocals and things like that. I wasn't paying attention to compression. There may have been a little bit of EQ preemptively as well, but it's really difficult to do things, especially live when you have an older mixing board. It's difficult to be in there and adjust compressors and stuff like that while you're trying to listen to everything happening and the whole room acoustics and things like that. So the reason why I bring that up is because when you're mixing inside the box, and a lot of us who are mixing now inside the box, it is really easy to throw a compressor on your MixBus and just think, oh, that'll fix the problem. That's my compression done. There, it's all pasted together and everything's good. I feel like I've had the worst mixes where I throw a MixBus compressor on there, and in the end, I feel like it doesn't sound right. It just sounds overly compressed, and things don't sound like they're breathing and cohesive the way I want them to be. And there's a little technique that I've been using in the little past while that has gotten me good results. The reason why you see this compressor on my screen, by the way, is because I want to show you with the compressor and then without it, and show you the mix and kind of explain to you the techniques that I've used to get to where I am right now with this mix. So if you don't know what this compressor is, it's the new SSL solid state logic compressor, the SSL version of it. And it's okay. I don't think it's worth the price tag that it comes with, but I'll review this compressor as well in another future video, maybe the next one or the one after that video. But anyway, so what I want to talk about was how I go about using compression throughout the mix to get to the end result with the compressor not on the actual mix bus. So let's play this track first off, and I'll show you some stuff that I did before I got to the final mix bus and stuff like that. So let's just play the track first. I'll play this section here. Let's go. Maybe I'll just change that down. Okay, so there's a couple of things that I want to bring to your attention. First off, it's the master fader here. So the master meter, I should say, that you can see. I'll just make this full size up here. And this fader here is something I really pay attention to in a lot of my mixes nowadays. And the reason why I do that is because, I mean, you don't have to look at this fader. You could put on any kind of meter here. So say, for example, you just want to put on your PreSonus metering and you had the VU meter. You could do the same thing. You could play the VU meter. I'll just put this on here and show you. So you could change the sensitivity down a bit. And what I pay attention to now is where the peaks are hitting. So I look at literally the peaks of my kick, snare, stuff like that. So the main instruments that are playing like a bass, excuse me there. So it could be a piano, bass, whatever my main peak is. If it's not a drum kit that you got in your mix, it might be a piano, whatever it is. And I pay attention to those main peaks. The reason I look at that is because normally a compressor, if it's looking in peak mode, it's going to compress the peaks of that peak that goes through or goes over the threshold. Not all compressors work the same way, and that's something as well that I want to talk about in my next videos about compressors and things like that. How they don't all work in the same fashion. So, for example, you'll have compressors that are in the... Where is it? We'll go to the Isotope because this Neutron is probably one of the most hot toys out there at the moment, I'm guessing. I've got Neutron 1, so I'll just show you. It's Neutron 2 if you got that anyway. But anyway, there's 3 styles of compressors here. So we've got an RMS style of compressor, which RMS is kind of like an average reading. It tells you exactly how it works. So it's an average levels of the input signal of a global detection circuit. So what that means is it means the average level of all of the RMS put together. So the peaks, the average, low levels, and in between, the averages, they get all of that averaged out, and then you'll get a final detection of that. So once the compressor knows that's the peak that hits of that average, that's when it starts to compress. So it still works similar to like a peak compressor, but it doesn't sound the same. A peak compressor, and I'll talk about this on here as well. So obviously the peak detection mode uses the peaks of each the level that comes through. So for example, when your kick comes through, that's one peak. If your snare comes through, that's a peak as well. But it depends on which one is the highest. So the highest peak, it's going to compress the highest one that comes through. So that's obviously how that works. Then you've got true envelope detection mode, which uses average level again, something similar to the RMS, and normalized frequencies across the frequencies and a global detection circuit. So, I mean, if you're looking at just inside of Neutron, for example, and you've got these 3 different options and you don't even know which one to choose, it's going to be really hard when it comes down to, say, for example, a master compressor. Not to say that SSL does that. I mean, SSL doesn't have 3 different options to choose from. It's an SSL compressor. But at the same token, you've got all of these different compressors you've got to work with in your mix, as well as then trying to figure out how you should really compress your master bus. So if you try and think of this as a good template or a good idea to use, this is what I use recently in my mixes as well. I'll pay attention to my peaks first of the peak signals. So say, for example, my loudest thing on this, this specific track is my kick. So I'll just play that and I'll show you. So you can see that goes to about -9. Now that's the peak level that's hitting there, and that's because I've got this plugin. Actually, let's take that off there so it doesn't add any volume. But I mean, I've got this mix tool here, which is adding 12 dB of volume, and that's so I don't have to boost my audio interface up really loud. But then it allows me to mix quite low in the main levels here. So just a little trick as well. That's the other thing. But I've also got this imager on here, which is controlling some of the image of the actual stereo field. But apart from that, there's no other compression or anything else. So you can see that the loudest peak there is -9. If I introduce the bass as well, let's see what that actually does to the mix. All right, cool. So you guys just saw then that as soon as I introduced the bass and the kick was playing at the same time, there was an increase in volume. Now that tells you one thing immediately. It tells you that the 2 instruments are in the same area of frequency, and obviously because of that, there's a boost in volume. So I'm not getting phase cancellation, otherwise I'd be getting a lower volume. So obviously I'm boosting in the same particular area with these 2 instruments. So it tells you one thing immediately where you can straight away go, okay, I've got two levels that are being boosting my level of frequency here. So if my levels are going higher, then maybe I need to do something about those two instruments together, and they're combating each other. So you may then go and decide, okay, I'll compress or I'll EQ or I'll do whatever to that track, and you can do that to that individual track. And that's well before you ever put a bus compressor on this master bus. So that's a really good way to know that you've got fighting frequencies that are in the same stereo field. And even if you look at the meter here as well, this will show you as well that as soon as the kick hits, the bass goes way higher. So you just saw the average go up a little bit more than it was at the start, and now it's at -20, which is probably too loud for a mixed track. Maybe a mastered track, you'd want -20 with your low end. If you guys go and look at reference tracks, you'll see what I'm talking about. But a lot of really, really good mixers don't usually go over that -20 kind of area, depending on how loud the track is as well. I'm talking about RMS. But anyway, I just wanted to show you guys that using this method will really help you get a clearer, better mix. And then maybe later on, if you want to throw on a master bus compressor, you can do that. There's nothing wrong with mixing into a compressor either. You're absolutely welcome to do that as well, if that's the sound that you're going for. But I just feel like a lot of people have a mixed bus compressor just thrown on there because that's what they see the pros do. The pros do it. Of course they do it, but they know exactly what they're doing. They're trying to achieve a result in the end. So if your result is, the idea of just throwing on a master bus compressor because you see somebody else do it, or you see me do it on a mix or whatever, make sure you know why you're doing it before you throw it on there aimlessly and then hope to get the best at the end of your mix. So I hope this helped you guys. I'm going to try and elaborate further on this video. I just don't want to go to, going too far on this particular video, but I will elaborate further, and I'll go into more of this later on the next couple of tutorials. So catch you guys in the next one. Peace out.